I don't know.
You can't
That was fun.
No, I really liked the fact that there was a space, like I don't know if it's still there by the Union, probably not that way, like, the AirTV offices,
The back.
What's that?
The back concrete,
Right, yeah.
it's closed off now.
Oh, shit.
Oh yeah, the concrete's the bad concrete.
like concrete.
Yeah, that's in the media office.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. Is it being moved anywhere?
We
Oh,
got
that's
back in
shit.
place. We've got some lockers in like a depressing little storage place.
Oh, that's so
that's
shit. So sorry, I was going to say that my favourite memory, we'll have a particular, like, one of any, like, kind of classrooms or projects or anything, but I love the media office because it was a space that you could just use. You could just kind of wander in at any point and stuff, and, like, I was more involved with the Drama Society than AirTV as much as I was doing, like, I was studying film, right. That's fucking fair. I'm just saying, they've never invited me back, just saying. And yeah, but at the same time, like, it was just really nice to kind of have this, like, dedicated space to go and always have people that were kind of similarly minded and stuff, and meant that we were struggling with an idea, you could just go in and there would be someone there that you could kind of be like, can I talk something out? Can someone be my sounding board, or can someone be my rubber duck? And just like speak to someone and then just talk out a problem, which it just having that business is super good. Sorry you guys don't have that. Demand that. Well, the union demands it.
I think I remember that just being a good space just for actually not doing any filmmaking. I think I got less filmmaking done there than I did. I recall you sleeping on the floor there quite a lot.
Yeah, sometimes. When we were trying to prepare the AirTV Awards some years, sometimes there was some hardships trying to get everything in and helping people finish their movies and stuff.
Oh yeah, the deadline. Is there still like the hard deadline?
Yeah.
Is everyone still with their laptops in the pub beforehand? Yeah, I've had a
Struggling
few.
with exporting
With
stuff.
the export, I've had a few tearful years in the pub. Like, what's this fucking working?
You were very kind to me, I remember, my first year when I did my first film.
Yeah.
And you, I think, purposefully gave me a little bit extra time to edit mine at the expense of your own.
Yeah.
Which is why you pulled it on my earth and I made you do that, so thank you.
Yeah, I liked in that year that I remember when I was station manager. I remember there was a good variety of projects going on, not just the filmmaking side of things, but we were doing a bunch of factual stuff as well. Back then we were running things like my friend Angus ran a thing called Stir Sport, which we would just do like sport highlights of the sports union and things like that.
That's right.
Yeah, well actually that came after when I was doing
Oh,
that
no.
kind of stuff, and then but we also, I remember like one memory I got was when this was in 2010 and the Conservative government had just came in, and there was a big student march happening about student fees, so AirTV sent a crew down, and as we were down there, that's when the kind of like some of the student riots started, and they stormed the Mill Bank building, and do you remember they were kind of like people that certain groups had, you know, got involved, and it was all kicking off, and the police got involved, and we were there with our cameras, and we were like, this is excellent. And we were just like, go, go, go. And,
a field by any chance?
the what, sir?
Like in a field?
It was in it wasn't in a field, it was like the Conservative headquarters, basically got stormed in London. Got stormed
I found
by-
like a,
I can
we
send
were
you
looking
that.
through the DVDs and the discs, and I found like a strange like riot video with police and stuff. I didn't know if it was real or not.
That might be it. But yeah, I think that's. I just remember that was all just a very exciting project at the time, and then putting that together and bringing it back up, and we edited like a 10-minute kind of doc that was the kind of story of the day and everything. And I think we ended up getting like the NUS award for like student media of the year or something like that, which was quite good on the back of it. So, but that variety of projects that year I think was really good. So you had all that kind of stuff going on, and then we also had all the creative filmmaking happening in the background as well. So yeah, but I think that was good.
Sorry, I was going to say, one thing that used to excite me a lot was when it was coming up to the time of the AirTV Oscars and you could walk through the Union and they had all the posters up. I
Yeah.
used to love walking past that was really cool because you got like a buzz.
Yeah.
You know, it was coming.
That was good.
That was fun.
We did a thing where we edited like famous film posters, but we edited them to look like all the media lectures. Like we had one of like the Matrix Revolutions with all the hundreds of Agent Smiths, but it was like hundreds of Joe Izods or something. That was quite good.
A question for all of you. What is your favorite film?
Letterbox delivery.
Depends on what mood I'm in.
It's a good one.
Like I can kind of switch between Little Women, Murder, Little Women, and The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, I've got loads of different influences. I had to write about my influences, and I kind of like had this really weird selection of films that like these don't connect together. And then I was like, if I was to put these in a category, what would we call it? And it would say films that walk so Barbie could run. Those are my favourite films. That includes Legally Blonde. And yeah.
I think I'm going to sound like a total film bro when I say that The Runner is like my favourite film. Yeah, but like, it was my favourite film, and then when I was down in London and when I got to work on The Martian, I got to actually see Ridley Scott in action, where we'd sit in the cinema and I was there to take his notes and do that, and he corrected my spelling, which was a really nightmare moment for me, which I still think about. But it was really cool to see his process in that, in terms of, because he came from an art department background, and so when he's struggling to explain something, we have an easel at the side of like the room, which we would bring in, and we'd like, I think one thing he was trying to do was describe the clouds on Mars, and how well they look, and so what we would do is we'd bring the easel in, and just everyone would take 5, and we would just draw out exactly what he's looking for.
So jealous.
It was so cool, and then I just basically deleted my notes instead of looking at the picture. But just seeing that cool creative process was great, and I kind of quantified it as probably my favourite film as well.
I don't know if you worked in the Martian, it's one of my favourite films of all time. It's like, it doesn't matter what mood you're in, whether you're sad, like,
Comedy that turns into
really?
Yes!
Yeah.
It's from the Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Because they
Really?
It was
nominated
the best comedy to the best drama. But they changed it last minute. Do you remember? It was meant to be the best drama, and they swapped it to best
Oh, I
comedy.
missed this.
It was really funny.
I didn't see when it came out in the cinema. It was a while later. I think I just had a movie with my sister, and I was just. It's a film that I constantly go back to, no matter if I'm just in the mood to watch a great film. I'll stick The Martian on. Fucking love it. It's so good. So fucking jealous.
I remember you came in one day into one of the classes, and you had just seen Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and you walked in, and you went, that's my favourite film of all time. Straight in front of, what's his name? Rollinson, Dave Rollinson. Dave, what a guy. I'll say,
Something new in this film here.
is that, I will say, Your Name, which is an anime from 2016. Lots of nods. I like that. I love that. Perfectly written. It's got everything. Yeah, that's my answer.
Get a screening of that. 2 years last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It's a classic. I've seen it hundreds of times. It's great.
Mine's is John Carpenter's The Thing. Love that.
Yeah. That's good work.
Board game.
Like an official board game from the film.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Give your Play-Doh for The Thing.
Well, I would say that mine is like probably, since obviously you're talking about factual TV stuff tonight, I'd probably say a documentary that I think we should all watch, which is called Collective, and it's a documentary about a nightclub fire that happened in Romania, but it's not about the nightclub fire, it's about the aftermath of everything that happened with the hospital system and everything, a lot of the kind of like corruption perhaps and happening with arresting people fighting for justice, and it's just a really well made, great documentary. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. So I think if you go and see one documentary after tonight, you should go watch it.
What would you say is one skill you've learned throughout your degree that has helped you the most in your professional career?
Kevin watched a fucking single film once to be
So useful.
Yeah. I did my documentary. I did a dissertation on adaptation entitled "Why Are Gothic Monsters Thirst Traps?" I talked about why why Dracula, Phantom of the Opera, and Jekyll and Hyde, when you translate them to film, are sexy. I didn't read a fucking single one of those books. So I think life skills. I mean, I know that I assume that most of you have moved away from home to live in Stirling, live on campus or anything. The fact that you have been kind of forced to do so for this degree, or like to be part of this campus environment, the life skills that you get is going to put you a lot ahead of other people who have stayed at home. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing for people to kind of stay at home, but the fact that you've had to kind of like, you know, learn how to look after yourself and be very autonomous is what's going to give you like, it's what's going to put you at the top of the pile. If people are reading CVs for budget 20-year-old people who all have the same degree from different institutions, like you've been like, I've lived away from home and like, you know, learned how to live in a kind of collective environment, and people are going to be like, then I trust you to have critical thinking more than someone who doesn't. So just don't underestimate how many skills you've picked up by living away from home, and use them to your advantage, because it does actually give you so much more of an edge, I'd say.
I'd say, I think the biggest skill I picked up on university was communication. When I first joined, I was quite shy and not very outgoing, and then through AirTV, getting a good group of solid friends that could back me up in terms of just like my confidence and, you know, gassing up your pals and stuff like that, really helped me to sort of, you know, come into my own and sort of, you know, become sort of strong individually as well as in a group. But the job I do is mostly convincing people to, you know, do things they might not necessarily want to do, or like on location. A lot of the time I'm convincing homeowners to let us into their house, which with Kirsty and Phil will totally slate their house. So it's convincing them that it's not gonna happen. It's actually, your house is brilliant. But we actually put things on for a reason. And so it's a lot of sort of communication skills over the phone, in person, email. Learning all these skills are like incredible in terms of getting you progressed in your career, and convincing, not necessarily in all walks of, whether it be film or TV, convincing people to help you out and to do what you need them to do will help you in strides.
I'd say people skills, because with the amount of like new people you meet at university, as well as the classes and societies and clubs and everything, you have every possible personality there. And as Danny said earlier, like the film industry is a people's industry. So if you can master being able to talk to people you like and get along with, as well as the ones that you don't like and don't get along with, then you'll have a much better time navigating, especially like the early runs, as you try and make an impression, and then other people can take you on. Because as a freelancer, it's, for me, a lot of the times it was just ended up being who you know. So somebody else will take you on. Somebody was like, oh, do you know this person, or do you know this person? But then that's how you get it. So I actually think, yeah, beyond the degree, which obviously learned both, people skill.
I was taught a wanker.
It's just like
I'd say keeping a positive attitude. Obviously, it's not necessarily one you'd first think of, but if you're able to keep a positive attitude while you're working on set, people are going to want you back because you're a nice person to be around. If you're going to be grumbling and complaining the whole time, no one's going to want to work with you again. So if you're, you know, that person, you know, if you always remember that person's comfortable or whatever it is, they're always going to want to bring you back. So as long as you're sound, then you'll be fine. That's kind of what I got from it.
I'll bounce off that slightly as well. It's a shame Malcolm couldn't come to me because I've not seen him in ages. But I went through a similar path, and so I went up the AD ladder, and there's been quite a few times where, when I was thirding, I'd get new PAs on, and I could tell you by the end of the day if I wanted them back, pretty much. Like, you know, you could tell. And it wasn't just like a stamina thing. It was more, you know, are you being nice to the people? How are you communicating with people? Are you being, you know, just polite and friendly? Which, just as you said, goes a long way. So yeah, I agree.
I mean, I agree with all the guys, but I might add one as well, just to, so it's not the same answer. I mean, I do think people skills are just so important, because that's obviously, people, when you're kind of like applying for roles in any industry, people kind of think, are you good at the role, but also they're thinking, do I want to work with this person all the time? And so they want to work with people who like are going to create a comfortable environment for the colleagues who are going to kind of lead from the front, who are going to, work as a part of a team and everything like that. And I think those people skills are the central of all of that. But in terms of like maybe learning a skill at university that was really useful for me going into the industry, it might be something like also just like shooting to a deadline, because I think a lot of you are kind of doing like these short films and things, and you might be making your own projects, and you might be inviting some people to work as your actors, something like that. You might be like, can you come on this Saturday and we'll all do this, and I promise you'll be away by 6. And it might be like 4 o'clock, and like, God, I don't know if they are going to be away by 6. And you've got to kind of take control of a room, and you've got to, think practically about how you're going to get it all done in time and stuff like that. That is actually really good practice for actually working, especially in the kind of industries that me and Danny work in Bachelor, because you will have stuff like that where you've got to try and get through a certain amount of content by a certain time, and you've got to kind of stick to schedules and stuff like that. And you've just got to be quite practical and direct, and you've got to take control of the people and take control of the room and lead from the front in a very positive way. And I think those kind of projects that you're doing in your own time, where you're forcing yourself to do that, is actually really good practice. And that's why things like AirTV are great, because you all kind of can work together on each other's projects and work as a group, and you kind of get used to working as a group, and you get to know how you can get things, how to achieve things on a schedule as part of a group. So I think keep on working together and keep on being ambitious with what you're trying to make, because that will give you invaluable skills when you actually get into these kind of industries.
You mentioned there was a lot of financial ups and downs and kind of time off between jobs, and I imagine it's also very long days at the set, especially if you're a runner. I was wondering what your kind of top tips would be for managing like mental health, physical health, well-being, that sort of thing, while you're dealing with all this.
We're actually coming into a really interesting time in the industry where those conversations are actually becoming way more that. This is a pet peeve of mine, is that so much of our industry requires on all of us be physically or mentally well. It is bullshit. And I think being able to spot, some people have certain reputations. Some companies just have reputations of only working with certain people that just kind of do all the work and overexert themselves and things, and you just got to speak to people and do that. I think the best thing you can do is by openly having those questions and feel absolutely no shame for being hey, is there an access rider for mental health? Is there does this project have a wellbeing coordinator? And being super, super accessible for that, and being super open about that, because these companies that are hiring you, production companies, have a responsibility to their people, and sometimes they forget that. They're very much they'll spend the money, they'll have these big in-depth conversations about whether they can afford a grip for one day while someone's having a mental health crisis on the ground. That literally happened to a shoot I was on, and I was like, this person's having a crisis, and it's oh, it's fine. She spoke to the mental health officer 2 days ago, and I was like, where is the mental health officer? I'd like to speak to her and just tell her to be around. And so she goes, oh, she's not actually on set, she's in the wardrobe department back at base. And I'm like, why is, so there's quite a lot of cutting corners. I think knowing your limits and not being worried to advocate for them, and just try and foster an environment. If you see a crew list that has a mental health coordinator or a mental health first aider on it, great. Then just know that you're with a good company, which is great. Another thing I can advise you potentially to do is, this is a conversation that's very new in the industry, very, very new. I'm talking within the last year I'm really starting to see this. It costs, you can get it free, I think, through the Film and Television Charity, but you can get your mental health first aid training, and people are now starting to be we need someone to do that. So if you're I'm a runner, I'm also a mental health first aid trainer, then you are top of the stack. And I don't want you to say take on anyone else's thing, but that is just something that's part of an active conversation. Taking care of your mental health is just make sure that you always have water, take care of the people around you. If you're feeling starting to struggle, don't push yourself to burnout, because by that point it's going to be so much harder to pull yourself back, which is why there's gaps between jobs. Loads of people do a job for a couple of weeks and then go, oh, I'm off for the next couple of things, which is great because I'm going to be sleeping for 3 weeks for them. And that's so fucked up. The idea of finishing my job, you have to sleep for 3 weeks. You shouldn't have to, but it is so normal. So I think it's just be aware that things are changing and try and gravitate toward places that actually acknowledge that. But yeah.
I learned that the hard way. So a big piece of advice would be to try and recognise your limits, because I thought I was invincible at the beginning. So
And it's bad if you're not. Like,
well,
and it's not.
the industry taught me one way, which was exactly that, and I said yes to every single job. And as soon as I was getting contracted for bigger things, the break between those was scarier. So my longest time, and this is very true, I was three years going job to job to job with no holiday, and I didn't realise it until afterwards. And I struggled to recover from that burnout for a good couple of years afterwards. I just didn't know, because it just felt, you know, those 14 as an AD, 16, 18-hour days, you become accustomed to them. So you're just like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and you just don't realise what that's doing on your body. So I would say, try and recognise that you're not invincible. My sister's in the film industry as well. She's a graphic designer in the health department. She and I had a conversation really early on in her career, and she's doing so much better at taking a job, taking a break. It's not always possible, because the jobs, when they come, you've got to. But it's possible. It's possible, and as Sarah said, it is changing, or it's starting to draw attention to itself a little bit more. But be careful as well. Look after yourselves.
It's like, I think people will get away with things, but obviously the post-producers, I guess, are so busy with a million different things that they've got to do right. It's never going to cross their mind because it's not normal. But if someone then goes, hey, do you offer an access rider? Then they kind of go, oh, we don't. Maybe we should. Hold on, let me look into that. Okay, I've got an access rider. Here's your access rider. And then for every going forward, it just takes one person to ask, and then maybe it changes.
You can't mention access rider?
Oh, sorry, it's a new terminology. It's an access rider is in terms of communicating any additional needs that you might have. So it's very popular for neurodivergent creators that kind of say, potentially, can I get a reduced call sheet? Call sheets are big, monstrous beasts that have all sorts of things, and it's so overwhelming. It can be really difficult to actually process your information and actually hold it all in your head. It just means that someone being like, you don't get a call sheet, babe. You're getting picked up at 6:30. This is the number in case someone doesn't show up, and that is all you need. You know what? Most people don't need them. Most people are like, I appreciate that if I'm feeling very overwhelmed, I can ask for that, but I can just take the normal call sheet. So it's kind of like doing that. There's a really great documentary that Blazing Griffin, one of the post houses that David talked about. Blazing Griffin are amazing, by the way. They're so supportive, and they also offer work placements as well, and quite a lot of their like post-production runner, which is basically a receptionist for the facility. But you greet people when they go in, show them to edit suites, help them with their lunch order. They're very, very kind to people. They just made a documentary called Working Differently, and it's free to watch on their website, and it's all about the differences that are happening for neurodivergent people in the creative industry, also for people who have mental health issues. And an access rider is, I think they actually offer a download as well, which basically just says, do you have any kind of extra needs that we can do there? Because that's like, if you need something, you should be able to ask for it. They are your employer. You are giving them a service, and in return they are going to give you money and also make sure you are safe while you do that thing. So that's what it's called. So I think if you're kind of looking for it, you could probably just Google and find a template of it. But if you're being asked for a job and you need an access rider, you can email and ask for it and just say, do you provide one? And I guarantee if they don't know what it is, they're going to Google it quickly and be like, yeah, obviously we provide an access rider. What do you think we are? Bad. And so yeah.
I think if you're working in the freelance industry as well, it can sometimes come with that fear of, oh, I don't want to say anything, against this person, or I don't want to speak out and say these hours are too long because I might get blacklisted and then I won't be asked back to that company again. So I think sometimes when you're working as a freelancer, moving between companies and projects, you can have that kind of inherent fear where you're like, I'll just shut up and keep my head down because I want to keep working. But I think that more and more we're encouraging people not to do that. If people are, like Sarah said, if producers are taking the mick on set, if people are abusive in any kind of way, if there's anything that is not right that's happening, then I think obviously increasingly, especially at places like where I work, like AirTV Studios, we've got mental first aiders in place for all our productions. We kind of got, like, instead of just trying to treat freelancers quite disposably, we've got talent managers that like to keep people on the books and have continuous relationships with them, so that as they come and go, it's not just a fresh hello every time. It's we actually develop a relationship via those talent managers, which is important. But I think if you are working as a freelancer in these kind of industries, don't be afraid to stick up for yourself and say when you don't think something's right. It's not just for yourself, but for other people that you're working with, because the people who are above the people who are maybe taking the mick in that kind of way will want to know. So that's.
I wanted to kind of ask you, because that's something that I'm kind of trying to get at. Why is it that in film and TV is there such a like big, I guess like not misconception, but I feel like a lot of entities when it comes to disabled crew members and any kind of content that is disabled related, they immediately go, oh, no, we don't have the access to that venue or this certain type of agreements or crew members who can actually assist. Is there? I know there is a stigma attached to it, but why is it that other entities that have nothing to do with the film industry per se? Because, for example, I'm currently working for one short film, and we were looking for venues with the accessible, doors, and to actually secure our crew, because we have literally people who are in wheelchairs. What is it that they immediately go, oh yeah, we don't want to deal with this?
Time and money.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of assume that, but is there anything else?
Time and money. A producer's got a bajillion different things to do and figure things out. Someone said, I really want to film in this location. It's a burlesque club. There's only one in Glasgow. But it's a great thing. Oh, the venue are great for it, fantastic. Goes, oh, hold on, it's not wheelchair accessible. And it's not wheelchair accessible. It's like, well, do we have anyone on crew at this time? No, we're still finding things. We haven't crewed up yet. It's like, well, we'll deal with that later. Let's book the venue. Instead of being like, actually, pin in this location, do that. It is the wrong thing to do, but everyone's answerable to that. It's a bad culture. It's a culture thing. It's not anyone making bad decisions. It's the pressures of their job. They only have X amount of money, and also they're like, okay, we found somewhere and it's further south, it's more expensive, so that means, okay, so add in the cost of the venue, but then also getting everyone from their base to accommodation, everything and stuff. And it's not, again, it's just the more conversations we can have about making it the norm to do this, making it normal for having an access coordinator who comes in at the earliest stages, who gets the script and goes, okay, when we're going to be in this location that's in a swimming pool, I will find out all the accessible things. So when the producer's like, right, locations, the access coordinator's been like, by the way, these are the accessible ones, I've done the work on it. If their one job is to look after the possible needs of the crew, which also, by the way, includes going around being like, hey, you want a toilet today? Because people don't. People are so stressed out about their work, they forget to pee. And the amount of times you just go, well, like, do you need a wee? They're like, yes. Oh my God, I do. Having someone going up and just asking, have you had a drink of water today? Would you like to put your arms above your head and stretch for a wee minute? It makes a difference. But again, it's still new. It's going to take a long time to change that culture, because we are in a recession. There is less money to make television. With it, people are like, you have to make TV shows in the same way that we've always done, but with less money, less crew, less time. Things are going to get cut, and it's just a bad habit that the decisions that are being made before we even bring on crew. So it just means that there's that big solid barrier. So they're not turning anyone away, they're just making it that certain people can't apply.
Yeah.
So it's a very tricky ground, and it's a conversation that needs to happen.
It's messed up.
It's so messed
It's
up.
really messed up. Because you would think, because especially, we have crew who are known in the industry, they've worked and they have multiple credits, yet they're still discredited for their work. It's crazy.
Yeah. I think again, change takes a long time, and that's rubbish, but the more people are talking about it, and you guys
the next generation,
you guys are the ones coming into it, you're the ones that kind of make demands and actually ask questions about it as if it's no big deal, because it's not. And hopefully that will
I think the fact that those conversations are happening now more and more often is a sign of the times changing.
Yes.
I recall at IWC, where I've worked loads, we have a mental first aider, which is someone who experienced sort of horrible burnout from working on TV himself, and from doing that he took a step back from the industry and decided that this was something that is essential to have, and because they built up a relationship with that company, they'd introduced him to sort of do that. And so, like, in a way that I don't mean to say this to put them down, but mostly to understand the limits and understand how a company respects that limits too, is the going on location is something they can't do just as their job. But they know that they're an incredibly capable, producer, caster, and so they keep them in the office specifically to do those jobs. So there are things that they do make accommodations to do that, and I think over time those conversations will become more normal and understanding people's things that way.
Things take time because, for example, right at the beginning of my career, this didn't exist, and I remember kind of halfway through the first kind of 2 years, they started putting environmental systems on the big films, and that didn't exist when I started. And suddenly it was people, how do we do recycling? Because there's so much waste on the film set.
Yeah.
Like, because again, it's, as Sarah was saying, it's not because they're doing it maliciously. All of the extra food that we've got, if we give it to someone, like a homeless shelter or something, and somebody dies from it, now suddenly they're liable.
Yeah.
So they're not doing it on purpose, but it's just finding the ways to make that happen. And then the last couple of years, we've now got intimacy coordinators, which did not exist. In my day, I have done closed film sets where they didn't exist when I was AD, and that's a new position. So these things will change with the right conversations.
And people are like widening the definition of intimacy, so it's not just physical intimacy anymore, where there's traumatic fight scenes or anything like, like, we don't even know as humans what triggers us. You can be on set and then start to feel like sweaty palms or starting to feel like, just be like, I don't feel great. And it's because you're watching an argument. If there's an argument being filmed, then you're spending an hour with people with raised voices, that might genuinely trigger you. And like, so just having someone being like, hey, if you're feeling these things, these are symptoms, if you're not like that, you need a little 5-minute break sort of thing, and just having people look after you and stuff. It's a really horrible statistic, but the film industry is this, for the rate of suicides by industry in the UK, after Submariners, it's film and television. Because we don't look after ourselves. Conversations are happening and stuff, but it is very, 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 very important to your career that you go in advocating. And also, at the start of any of my films, at the safety meeting, and the first thing, I tell everyone, fuck the film. And this is as someone who, it's my film, I want it made more than anyone else, but fuck it. Like, no film, it's not fucking important.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So I just think your career is really important to you and things like that, but just like know your own worth. Fuck the film. Like, just make sure that you kind of go in with that attitude, because no one's gonna. You're not being unreasonable keeping yourself safe.
I just wanted to add to that. I think it's good to join your unions.
Yes.
Like, I would join Back Two if you're going into the industry, and not only being a member of Back Two, but actually you can work within Back Two to fight for these things that you're talking about.
That's what I'm doing right now.
There you go. Like, I think that's
Literally.
why Back Two is so important, and the more members they have, the stronger they are, the more they can fight for everybody. So that's the only thing I would add to that as well.
There's a question for Sarah. I just want to double check. Did you say you directed something with a budget?
Yes.
So comparing that to like your 40-hour film, which is £9.
Yes.
Like how much can you do with that, and where does that money usually go? Is it crew, and like, does it make your vision better, or is it the same?
It's a really good question. So I've made 2 industry-funded films before, one a documentary and one fiction. And so I made my short film Candy through the Short Circuit programme, which is one of the only filming bodies in Scotland. There's only 2 rolling funds. There's Little Pictures with GMAC, which is £2,000, and then there's the BFI funded Short Circuit, which is
25?
Yeah, it was 15. Mine was last year 15, then it was 25. They're bastards. So it's 25k now, so it's a huge amount. But when you have people working for favours, then it's obviously like, the cost stays right down. But then as soon as you start paying one person, you kind of have to pay everyone. So it's usually crew. Also, it can go on kit. So when you start using kind of cinema cameras and things, this is where it kind of gets a bit outside of my knowledge, not being someone that's on the tools anymore. Like, my experience as a videographer kind of took me up to using DSLRs and stuff, so not into cinema cameras. But then I'll bring on a director of photography that does know how to use a cinema camera, but you're talking like quite a lot of money for those packages, those visions. And I guess you're wondering what's the point of it? So short film isn't really a lucrative business. It's not as if anyone's going to buy it. Like, there is options to it. There's ways for you to make money. There's prizes, I guess, for film festivals and things, but usually short film is an investment in future work, I guess. So making a funded film is amazing, but you have to answer to the funders. So what really frustrated me is that the way that Short Circuit works, Short Circuit is an organisation that's funded by Creative Scotland. So
with my development process, I went through this 3-month development on the script. I then pitched it, I got the funding, and then I went through further 3 months development, getting into pre-production and being like, we are now ready, we have a script that is shooting ready. And then that's when Screen Scotland went, can I see it? And that's when they come back with their notes. So it's already gone through many drafts, many things, and then that's when they're like, oh, it's too early to send to us, we only want to see it when it's finished. So then they're giving me notes that's like, have you ever thought about this? And I'm like, yeah, 4 drafts ago, bud. But at the same time, they'll be like, we think it's important and you have to change it because that's just what that. So when you make non-funded work, know that you will have the most control that you have. The more money you get, the less control you have. And that's just part of your learning process. You've got to learn how to answer notes. You've got to learn how to, also, you kind of learn to like notes. You get to, you get to be less precious about the vision and things, and you kind of have to leave your ego at the door. And some things are just so fucking stupid. In Candy, there was a narrative about a coercive controlling relationship, and we were talking about the design of this coercive controlling relationships living room. So I was like, it's a very plain living room. The woman who's in a bad relationship, she pretty much only has this one little corner of the room. It's a little shelf of hers that has like her dance trophies on it. It's her most prized possessions. And I had this big guy being like, if she was actually in an abusive relationship, would she even be allowed a shelf? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, surely she'd have to hide it. And I'm like, I don't think that's right. He's like, if she was actually being abused, then she wouldn't be allowed anything. I went, I think that's quite reductive. I think that's a really reductive view of relationships. And he's like, well, when I was getting divorced, and I'm like, why are you bringing this up in a professional meeting with a new filmmaker? I want to die. And basically, he made me change it from a shelf where something was noticed into a box. So there's a bit in Candy where for no fucking reason a box is pulled out of a TV unit. It's just so weird. It doesn't make any sense. It was meant to be like, you know, dance trophies, historical things, a little an older pair of shoes that have been like long retired. And Alice Lowe was my mentor, and when she watched it, she goes, "Are those dead baby shoes?" I'm like, "No!" But it looks like it because they come from this secret box. But again, that is something that I'm just like, this was a dumb note that I had to answer, but I had to answer it. So it's yeah, it comes with that. Also, when you get to a bigger budget, then I don't know whether you're writer, director, or producer, but the producer handles the budget. So it's a case of, as much as when it comes down to it, it's not your problem. You don't really get to decide on it. You get to obviously input in things, but it's a case of, this is what I want, and they're like, this is what you can have, and you go, thank you. So yeah, less control all around, but it means you kind of get to focus on vibes. Yeah.
Have you guys found that having a film and media degree has been something that's like incredibly helpful, whether it's like the thing that gets you the job over someone else, or is it just people realize, like employers realizing that you have some sort of experience?
No, but I would say that AirTV actually got me my first job in television because someone 2 years ahead of me was in the industry and was also in AirTV and said, Ian's a good guy. So that's how I got in, genuinely how I got in that first door. So I mean, the fact that you all know each other and that you're all passionate about getting into this industry and stuff like that, and you all kind of permeate it in different ways with different levels of success at different times. But you'll all know each other, and I think that actually does go a long way. And you'll know each other not just by being pals, but you'll actually have worked with each other and stuff like that, so you know what you're all like what your skill sets are like and stuff like that. So I think building that network now with each other is actually more important than you might think. And in terms of the film and media degree, I think the skills that you actually learn doing it are actually really important. So I mean, just like learning how to shoot, I think is like invaluable. I think just learning everything that you are. It's less about having the bit of paper and more about developing that passion and skill set and the people that you will network and meet with along the way. I think for me is the thing that really helps a lot.
I'd actually say yes. I did a dissertation documentary course. I think we were the first year that had Dario Sinforiani. Big love for Dario. And so we were his first sort of trial year where, I mean, at the time we got all the brand new cameras, we got all the brand new Avid editing suites, it was great.
Yeah.
But I made a documentary on the Scottish burlesque scene, which is like male burlesque, and that is, what we had originally pitched was, I think, just to do it on sort of strippers in general. But then we found this character, or person, Tom Harlow, who's Scotland's premier boylesque dancer. And when we told Dario about that, he was like, scrap the other idea, that's the one you want to go for. But finishing that, my first job when I started as a researcher was in development. And how I got that job was, they were like, what have you come up with? What have you done? And I was like, well, I've got all this stuff in AirTV. And then it was like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, but I made this, my dissertation was on boylesque and lights up, because what's that? I've never heard about that. And so you tell him about the story and sort of tell you what you did and how you put that together as a piece. And he goes, great, you can come up with ideas, you can figure that out. And you've got a proven example of that, of how that's gone. So I don't necessarily think I would have made that in AirTV, but I made that as part of my course, and that's then led me to other development jobs, because they go, you've got records of.
The other thing that Dario did was he actually sent a whole bunch of Stirling students to us to like be our runners constantly.
No
this was back in 2018 or something like that. So there was a time in 2018 where I just had a steady stream of like AirTV members be like, oh hi. And but they weren't AirTV members. They were members of the Stirling Film and TV course. So and I think that was invaluable for them to get FaceTime with all of us in the industry, and then when they're coming back up and their CVs come back, we say, oh, actually we remember them and they were really good and we want to get them in the door. So that kind of those kind of opportunities that came via the film and media course from Stirling. It was weird being on the other side of it within the industry, seeing that's really beneficial for students. So if the university are still doing any schemes like that, or they're still pioneering anything like that, then you should definitely take advantage of them.
They definitely do. For example, so I'm in the fourth year, and we had a whole module with a collaboration with Raise the Roof.
Yeah,
and
that's
all
great.
my colleagues got placements afterwards. It's
That's
competitive,
what
but
That was my first TV job up here.
really,
Yeah.
for most people, I think it was. But
Yeah.
also that they included it for BBC scholarship. We literally just had a meeting with them today. So there is a lot happening. They still do that, but maybe with different people, I think.
That's good.
I think we have time for one more question.
Pressure, make it a good one.
Okay, you've spoken about a lot of exciting things that you do as part of your jobs in film. What are the boring things? Do I need to get really good at Excel? Like, what am I doing to make myself to make my life easier?
Taxes, life admin.
I was going to give them.
Sorry.
That's one thing. That's a much better answer.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say on my first job, I was pressing a red light and bell at the end of the corridor for 10 hours.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I'd say in fact there's a lot of paperwork, because you need everything you film with, you can need location agreements and you contributor releases. If they suddenly decide we want to suddenly film with Max, he's here, let's film with Max. You need a background check on Max to make sure he's not secretly a crazy hate Nazi guy or something. And you need to clear it if you're filming with kids. You need all that kind of like clearance from their parents and everything. So there is a big string of paperwork that comes with our industry that you are going to get knee deep in if you get into that kind of, especially if you're in that kind of runner researcher kind of stages of things, and you're just going to have to suck it up, I'm afraid.
But I also, like, this is something that took me a while, like, I'm dyslexic and struggle a lot with prose writing, and sometimes I just get really, really stuck. Like, I get really stuck kind of like putting things together, and I was trying to, like, reach out, I was trying to find an agent at the time, and I was like, I feel like I'm just trying to say hello to someone and seeming like the biggest bumbling idiot. And then I said to my friend who, like, writes copy for a living, being like, can I give you 20 quid to write my cover letter? And for 20 quid, I got the best cover letter on the planet. Like, know what your weaknesses are and kind of know what other people's strengths are. If there's anything that's like, boring, you're like, I really, really can't do it, find someone else and offer skill exchange. There's a lot I kind of do for skill exchange. I'm like, can I get someone to read over something and I'll owe you one. The next time that you need an application read over, you need feedback, you need a sounding board, I'm your person because I owe you one. So I think, like, just know where your weaknesses are, and then also know who in your collective has strengths that way and stuff, and just like work the shit out of that. That's doing it on your own.
I think something that Sarah said was really good in terms of balance in your life, and because your work life doesn't need to be, especially what you're saying about burnout and things, your work life doesn't need to be your be all and end all. Like while I've been working in these kind of factual shows in STV Studios, me and my friend Mark, we also made a documentary for Sky Docs over in Ukraine in the past few years, which is going on Sky Docs like next year, which has nothing to do with anything that I do for like my industry kind of side of things. So there's space for both. You can work within industries and stuff like that, and you can get what you need from there, but you can also make space for your own passions and doing what you want, and make just space for your own life as well. I think is really important, So
I think I've got 2 jobs in particular which are very boring, but good to know because they're things that get you hired quite regularly. So there's one which is targeting. So when you're casting on a show, you have to do a lot of outreach to let people know that you're casting on this quiz show, or you're casting, you're looking for homes and people to apply to the show. It's a lot of sending a really like crappy social media ad out to as many people as you can, and literally like 5% of them being like, oh, I would love to share that, and the rest being like, just not even applying. So it's like really like laborious work that you have to go through to sort of show that you're doing the work. So that can be a bit boring. The other thing as well, but this one I think is actually quite good in terms of like helping you gain the skills to research and find information, is fact checking. So on location, we do this show which is I think it's about like, we do it in threefold. So voiceover takes about 300 facts. No, sorry, that's crazy. 150 facts. Then you've got sync, which is what is said on the show, which is another 100 facts. And then graphics, which is 50. All of them you need 3 sources for. It doesn't have to be like the Daily Mail or something like that. Legitimate, realistic sources that you have to basically justify everything that is said on the show to make it factually correct. And you have to do it in 2 days. And it's a crazy amount of work that you need to do in a short period of time. That's actually one of the harder parts that I've done, and I did that years ago. And we still get like some of the researchers who do that, and I sympathise with them, but I'm so glad I'm not doing it. But that is just like one thing that's like, but then that gives you the skills when you move up into something like another show I did was Food Unwrapped, which is like food science. It basically gives you the tools to learn how to become an expert on something overnight, and that's kind of the key thing you need to do as well when you're sort of working in sort of factual television. I know nothing, I love food, I know nothing about science, and so learning to become an expert on something really quickly, and so that you can speak to someone on a level that's like professional, and not sound like an idiot, and sort of talk to them about like all the different bacteria that in milk, even though you do not give a shit about what's in the bacteria in milk, is also like something you learn from doing that rigorous fact checking sort of stuff.
I'd say that from my experience, one of the things you really should do is like keep note of everything. Like if you ever have a meeting with production and they're about to take you on, have someone bring someone in to take meetings for you on that, take minutes on that meeting. So you have everything that was said in that meeting in black and white. So if they ever turn around and say, if you have the misfortune of working for a bad company and say, oh, well, we never said this, like, no, actually this is here, we discussed it on this date, we have recorded this, you have the minutes, I have the minutes. You just keep yourself protected, because sometimes you might work with someone that's not great, just because you need the job. But if you always keep yourself, as long as you know everything that's going on, you have a record of it, you should be fine. But that's kind of a boring thing that you probably should do, just to keep yourself safe.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Or?
I actually, something that I was just thinking about, what do you think is the biggest risk all of you took in your careers and you never looked back? But at the time, it felt like a huge deal.
Getting a fucking film and English degree. Yeah, studying film. It's the biggest fucking risk going. I'll answer seriously. For me, it was scare. In 2016, I was kind of done. I was making things. I didn't know much about the industry, and I didn't feel confident enough to ask. I thought asking would make me look stupid, so I didn't ask people. I didn't try and find things out. I thought I need to know this, otherwise people won't take me seriously. So I was going to lots of networking events. I was just with the wrong kind of crowds. It was the same people
over and over again talking about making films at the same things and just not actually making the fucking thing, and just a really toxic space, and it wasn't for me. Went to a film festival that was called, I don't think it's kind of going anywhere, it was like the Scottish Film Festival, it was called something like that. 20 films, 20 Q&A, all straight white men, and at no point did anyone acknowledge the fact that it was really badly gender split. And when I was like, this is actually not okay, then someone says, then you know what you need to do, Sarah, you actually need to start a film festival for women only. As if, I'm sorry, I don't need to form my own table, I deserve a space at this one. So I was really willing to walk away. So I was just like, I'm just fucking done. So when the 40 hour came around, I'd actually stopped doing anything for about maybe 8 or 9 months, and I thought, I've got a weekend and I'm raging about the legislative changes to abortion in Alabama. I'm just going to throw myself at it, and I was so prepared to get biggest backlash. I was just like, I was so prepared that people were going to fight me over this film. And it's the best piece of work I've ever made, and I stand by that even like years later. And it's because I made something purely for me that wasn't for anyone else, it wasn't for my career, it wasn't for anything else. And I cared enough about it that if people fought me for it, I'd be like, stand by it. And that made a breakthrough and just kicked off everything else. I got my start at The Social from that. I got to, that's what introduced me to the BBC. That's what got me my first kind of BAFTA qualifying credit, which meant I got onto Short Circuit. And yeah, actually, before I got onto Short Circuit, I got into the First Features programme to develop a feature film version of that. So I was developing the script for that, and and that all kind of came from just going, you know what, like fucking fight me. And so it was a big risk, but it paid off. And then I've learned the lesson of only making things that I care about enough that much. Otherwise, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I remember your post about that at the time. I remember it being really impactful. I remember reading that and being like, yeah,
just been that fucking over
damn
it.
right. I think for me was actually walking away from AD. So I was doing fairly well in the crew career, but I knew that I wanted to write and direct. So for me, the scariest thing was walking away from not that freelance is ever guaranteed, but a much more guaranteed stream of money to try and transition to doing the thing that I really wanted to do, because I was just stepping up to second AD and the money doubled. And this sounds so stupid out loud, but it scared me. And I was just like, one day I'm just going to be a first AD standing next to the position that I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just before the pandemic. I finished on a film then, and since then it's been like writing and directing. I first short films. I'm firsting a Sharp Short this month again, but that's because I need to eat. But other than that, that was my scary thing, I think.
Yeah, for me it was kind of going up for that first feature film. Again, didn't know what a grip was, but I just made that clear. I was like, look, I don't know what this is going to entail, but as long as you're able to accommodate me being a trainee in that sort of respect, I'll do the job. And then read the book, and that really, if you don't know how to do something, but you're willing to learn how to do it, people are going to respect that, they're going to acknowledge that, and they're going to see that you actually have that work ethic. So that was a risk, because I didn't know shit about Jack, but it paid off. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I'm worried that we've had quite a safe career until now.
This is the moment you're like, have I settled?
I think though, when I first stepped into freelancing, it was certainly a very scary moment, because I was working at this office runner job, having the possibility of doing a researcher job dangling up in front of me for a while, but then not quite giving me it. And I remember one day specifically, there was someone who'd come in. They told me there was no positions, and then suddenly a researcher came in on that day. And I remember them doing a phone call to a contributor, and I remember them sort of breaking down and crying before they could do the call. Now, part of me was at the time should have maybe recognised that they were having a hard time in doing that, but part of me was really frustrated because I was like, well, I can do that. And I feel like I should be able to do that, and that's something that I've not been given that opportunity to do. So I handed in my resignation, and then went to their leading competitor to sort of. But that took a while because I suddenly panicked. I was like, I don't have as much money saved up as I really should to really ride out the freelance storm. But then sort of getting that first job was the sort of certificate I need to know that I've got this push, you can do it.
You like safety.
I know, exactly.
You're safety officer.
Yeah, it's questioning myself.
This triggers an existential
No, I'm
crisis.
going to do something really risky tomorrow.
You should hold use of your
Yeah,
boss.
exactly. Usually when after
Post the
reservation,
AirTV films.
on that first.
Yeah, exactly. Share your first film around your office and then watch them all suddenly go, maybe we shouldn't have hired him.
Yeah, I think so.
Do it.
I mean, I do think in general, I think the best thing you can always do in terms of taking a risk is if you're like, I think what you said was really inspiring. This has happened to me a few times, but if you're in a position where you feel quite comfortable and you're like, oh, this is fine, like, I'm getting paid, the money's alright, but like, I don't want to rock the boat because who knows, it's always kind of rocky times out there. Everyone always says it's rocky times out there. Like, there's never a good time to do anything. But if you just feel like quite comfortable in something, but you're like, but this is not quite where I want to be. What's that kind of very basic quote that you want to be at the bottom of the ladder? You want to be climbing rather than halfway up a ladder that you don't want to be on.
Yeah.
So I think always keep that in your mind and don't be afraid to jump.
Also,
You should tweet that.
I didn't make that up.
Tweet it with an AirTV.
I really want to pick up something very quickly on pretty much what you both said, is that it can be so tempting to want to have a job in the industry, but if that takes all of the energy away from you working on the thing that it don't work. Like I was just actually talking to someone who's a journalist at STV, being like, I want to write and I have no energy to write because all my work is being a journalist. Should I quit my job and work in a cafe? And I'm like, yeah. And she did, and that's again thing with the mountain. You got to pick the right thing for you, and just because you're working in the industry doesn't mean you're doing the thing you want to do. Like, do anything you can to make sure you're doing the thing you want to do.
And your experience will always sit there. I mean, if you've done something and then you suddenly decide to start from scratch somewhere else or something like that, then you'll always have that experience. It's not irrelevant and it doesn't go anywhere.
So much is transferable, but you don't realise until you're actually
absolutely
in the thing you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the writers that are getting commissions now are people who have had really interesting experience. I think so. The writer of Such Brave Girls has had experience of actually being sectioned. So it's a case of that person's life experience or other job experience and things. People are there's loads of writers that are writing shows about the worst job that they've ever had, sort of thing, but they're coming at it with such authenticity because that's actually what they did. Like the example of the 2-pager that I showed earlier is based in a hotel, which is what I was doing, which is where I was waitressing. I was waitressing in a Premier Inn in Glasgow. Rough. But at the same time, it's taught me, so I know a lot about the hotel business, which is really weird. But it makes itself into scripts and stuff. It's all useful.
Yeah.
Stick it all in the compost heap.
And also, I would say just don't get down, because I know I did, with time passing. This sounds so stupid, right? But you want to get far so quickly, you don't realise how much you haven't lived yet, or you haven't learnt yet. And it's only, I would argue that my writing voice has only developed much more in the last couple of years after just existing. For a bit longer.
Me and Ian were talking about this. We were saying that, when we were in AirTV, there was an alumni night where people about our age, being in the industry for 10 years, came in with about our experience, being like, "Oh, I'm working in television," or I'm shadowing a director, and I was like, "You've been doing this for 10 years, before or not, you lazy fuck." And I remember being like, "Wait, I'm sorry, you've been doing it for this long," and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna have my first Oscar by 25." And I genuinely fucking believed it. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. Believe it, fucking do it. But again, like you say, things go like that. We had to deal with the pandemic and the amount of people we know getting their shit together, just getting their shit together that the pandemic fucking ruined it for.
Yeah, so true.
And things and everyone gets there differently, and you might work 10 years in something and then suddenly wake up and decide it's not for you anymore and change career. I know someone who was working in the film industry, fucking hotshot producer, that just decided she wants to be a primary teacher, and she's now much happier, and that is all fucking valid.
And also what you said is so true about, so one thing I really wanted to do on a lot of the films that I worked on was I would go to the director at some point during the shoot, and I would ask them, what do I do to do what you do?
Yeah.
And I have a little booklet somewhere with all these A-list named directors, and every single one gives you a completely different answer.
Yes.
Because they're just telling their own story,
Yeah.
and your story is different. So it doesn't matter if you go and work in hotels and then suddenly now you're directing something else. It doesn't matter. One of them said go to film school, one of them said don't go to film school categorically. They're always going to give you their own experience, and just don't be frustrated by that. Your own journey is special and different, and you can make it with time, and just be patient.
That was very hopeful. You wanted to end on.
Pause the YouTube video.
Thank you all for coming along.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank
The bar is still open, so.
Sure. Where is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Like if
It's by the venue.
We will show you.
It's in
We will show
venue.
you.
So the people are going, so if you'd like to come,
Nice.
follow.
Real quick, can we also get a round of applause for Ben and Nathan?
I can't believe you guys did that. That's like, oh, you deserve it.
Solid effort.
But yeah, Daz, thank you so much for inviting us here, and it's nice to be back. And
Yeah.
we can see that all this is still going on and everything. So it's
Yeah.
And nothing's changed in this room. It's beautiful.
We were briefly in 2D1.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right.
We lost this room for 1 year to that room, and I was very sad. And this feels like home.
Yeah.
Right, to the back.